We'll call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. I need a motion for the adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on April 11, 2022 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Draycott. All those in favor? And that's carried. Now, before we begin council this evening, I just want to do a short presentation. Tonight will be Phil Carpenter's last council meeting. Phil's last day as our Director of Public Safety will be this Friday, May 1st, 2022, marking a remarkable 44 years of service to our community. Phil started his career as City of Portage Summer Relief firefighter in 1978. And he worked his way up to Director of Public Safety in 2008. Phil's experience and commitment to our organization will be greatly missed by council, staff, and the community. So on behalf of the council and the citizens of Portage la Prairie, I want to thank Phil for his dedicated service to the citizens of Portage, and I want to congratulate him on a well-earned retirement. I'd like to call the Director of Public Safety up to the front at this time, please, and council and Mr. Pito, please. Come on in here, everybody. So on behalf of council, I want to present you with a little token of our appreciation for all your hard work over the last 44 years. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're good.
And when Phil started, disco was a thing.
Phil's life, it still is.
It continues.
Thank you very much. Did you want to say anything? Okay.
Again, I'd just like to say thank you very much. It's been wonderful working for the city. 44 years. Wow. I didn't think I'm that old, but I guess I am. And a great organization to work for. Treated me very well. Great team. Thank you.
Before we begin council, I have one short acknowledgement. We also just want to acknowledge the 96th birthday of Les Green, Portage la Prairie's Dean of Historical Research and Writing. Les is a strong advocate for local history and is an all-around great Portage la Prairian. Cheers to Les. So we have one public hearing this evening. I'm just going to go over the process for...
Your worship of delegations. For public hearing.
I'm sorry. We have one delegation this evening. Sorry. This is for the Portage Junkyard Dog Cycle Club, and Blair Geisel is the president, and he's here to speak to council. Welcome, Mr. Geisel.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to address council and update you on the Junkyard activity park that's going to take place at the old dump hill. And I also want to say how pleased we are that our club is partnering with the city, because that's making it much more of a community park, and it's going to serve the community better. It was more than a year ago that I think that I addressed, it was at least a year ago that I addressed the council proposing that we build a park on the dump hill. And at that time it was pretty limited. We were looking at a bike park only. And in November we contracted with Scatliff, Miller and Murray to design a park. And they expanded that. They had their own imagination, and it expanded into having a wheelchair accessible nature trail to the south side of the park, as well as in the future putting in picnic shelter and washrooms. So the park now includes the cycling infrastructure and those other things, as well as we're going to preserve the toboggan run, and we're going to repair the damage to it. In February, we sent out a tender to build the hiking trails and the cycling trails, and we will be signing a contract with a professional trail building company in the near future. The other thing we've done is we have received a permit from the province of Manitoba to use the fill that is stockpiled west of Highway Number 1 and Yellow Quill Trail, because when you're building on a landfill site, you can't excavate into it, so everything has to be brought in. So soil will be brought in to repair the damage to the top of the protective envelope on the dump, and then also to add to our trails. So we've received that, and we have a go ahead to take that material if we need it. One of the in-kind things our club was going to do was repair the damage to the Toboggan Run, and which is a fairly big job, but we were committed to do that. But fortunately, Real Foods, especially Food Shop in Portage, and the Renz Family Farm have offered to do that. So they're going to take on that responsibility of filling those deep ruts that are on the Toboggan Run with soil they're going to bring in, and to reseed that area so that it's stabilized. So we'd like to obviously thank them for volunteering to do that. So we'll find some other area where we can offer in-kind contribution to the project. So you've probably heard on radio and on Portage Online that we kind of started a pretty big fundraising campaign last week. And we also augmented that with email campaign and a Facebook campaign. So fundraising is going on in earnest right now. We've received about $65,000 in grants, and some of them I could announce, some of them haven't been announced yet. And we've got other donations. You're familiar with the Yule Family Matching Fund, and I know donations are coming into the city, and I don't know how much we've received in the last week, but I would estimate we're probably somewhere around that $200,000 mark in funds that we've raised on a project that potentially could be about $900,000. Things are going well, but there is one glitch, and that is getting permission to use the property from Crown Lands. And there's still no word as to when that decision is going to be made, or if that decision is going to be made in our favor. So that's really holding things up right now, and will probably cause a delay in some of the project in getting started. We are anticipating to get some of the work done in 2022 and then finishing it in 2023. Are there any questions?
I had one question, Mr. Geisel. So the response from Crown Lands, have you talked to our MLA about this?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And he is aware of it, and as far as I know, he has talked to the real estate division of the province of Manitoba, who we have to make the request to, or who the city has made the request to. So apparently what's holding things up right now is a survey, and a survey is not going to take place until all the snow's melted and the water is gone from the site. And if you're familiar with some of that site, it's quite marshy. So I don't know when this is going to happen.
Okay. Other questions from council? Council Knox?
Yeah, I'd just like to say congratulations. Your fundraising campaign that you started with your matching funds from the Yule family is a great fundraising campaign, and well done to the Yules, and also great from Real Foods and the Lorenz family. Great contributions, and I've heard lots of buzz in the community about this project. People are excited, people are happy to support, so I wish you well, and hopefully these delays will get fixed quickly.
Well, thank you.
Any further questions or comments from members of council? Okay. Thank you very much for sharing that information with us.
Thank you.
We have one public hearing this evening, and I'm just going to outline the process for public hearings. First of all, I will ask if there's anyone present to speak in favor of the application. The applicant speaks, and then anyone else in favor speaks. Letters in favor will be read out. I will ask if there's anyone present to speak against the application. Those against will speak. Letters against will be read out if there are any. And finally, the applicant can respond to any concerns brought forward. Council can ask questions at any time, and there's a 10-minute time limit on speakers' presentations. So we'll open the public hearing for the 2022 Financial Plan and Tax Levy Bylaw. This is 22-8735. And is there Anyone here to speak to it?
Thank you, Worship. During the public hearing portion, I will do a presentation which will be available for the public to ask questions to, if there are any, and then we'll close it and move into the formal approval. So at this point, I will proceed with my presentation.
Thank you.
Well, I think it is on slides. So just rolling through the first slide, living with the possibilities. So we've made a lot of progress in our community, and there's been a lot talked about what we're doing with capital investment and an investment in infrastructure that citizens can see, who are kind of above the ground, and stuff that you can't see. And on both accounts, we're spending a lot of money. Saskatchewan Avenue West development was 15 years in the making. It's probably longer than that. Well, it is longer than that. There's previous councils have talked about this project. Fantastic that it's moving forward, but it is an expensive one at $37.5 million. Again, fully funded without property tax increases, and that's because we're getting levels of government contributing to it, and then we do have some reserve funds set aside, and then retiring debt will then replace some of the payments we're making to this project. So we are planning, although we've heard about delays on other projects, this project has been delayed, and it is weather related. So we still are anticipating a project completion of 2024, which will be a huge facelift for this section of a main artery in our city. Very excited about that. And that's why I mentioned kind of above ground and below ground on the next slide, utility upgrading. So we talk a lot about P3, Project for Water Pollution Control Plant, and then expanding our operations yard facility for relocating our people and our maintenance sheds there. So again, another project that's been delayed by weather, but another example of the very significant amount of money that the city is spending on infrastructure. Highlighting that in 2022 in capital projects, $32 million in general capital projects and $26 million in utility capital projects. So the city will be abuzz in this year as well as next year and beyond in the types of investments from the municipality in improving infrastructure in our community. So what does that affect? And naturally, you're going to think about property taxes, and we make a couple of big statements here that for everything I just mentioned, there is no regular property tax increase. There is one, but it is to deal with a specific item, and that is the RCMP member unionization, which I've talked at great length in the past about. We will be incurring a $500,000 per year increase in our operating budget and up to almost $1 million in retroactive pay increases. So how we have found a way to handle that, but it certainly won't come without a small tax increase. So how will the city fund all those expenses? And so the city has been, for the last number of years, had a target for administration to work in with a 2% increase in regular operating expenses. And so they have done a fantastic job, both through realizing on operating efficiencies. But let's face it, we've had a lot of investment in our community and our region, and our assessed tax base has been going up. And so we are collecting more funds as a result of the investment that not only we're making, but private individuals and companies are making in our city. 2022 capital projects will be primarily funded from reserves, and you'll see kind of graphically what that means when I continue with the presentation. So the $500,000 increase for our RCMP operating costs, though, will be funded by a property tax increase of 4.2%, and the $940,000, though, in retro pay will be funded from reserve accounts. So we knew this was coming, so we did plan for it. So however, the numbers are a lot larger than when you're anticipating. And I think this council is not it's not news to this council that us, along with a lot of other municipalities, continue to lobby the federal government in terms of assisting us in dealing with the retro pay and increased operating costs. So that's still up for debate on exactly what's going to happen, but we're continuing that lobby effort. So net of education taxes, this is a 2.13 increase for residential property taxes and 1.43 for commercial properties, and I'll kind of just explain that a little bit. So for what we usually normally show citizens is a $250,000 example on a residential property and a $500,000 commercial property, and you can see that this tax increase does represent a $77 increase for property taxes compared to 2021 and 191. So I would say that this council administration have worked very hard over the last number of years, despite the continued investment that we're making, is to continue to obviously put money away in the city savings accounts and our reserves and continue to invest in our city without having to do property tax increases. So just applaud the immense efforts in all departments. on how we've been able to do that. And this year we are incurring one, but this is a extraordinary event, which was, while we planned for, the severity of was much more than we had planned for. So in addition to transfers for reserves, capital, and property taxes, taxes are used for these city services. So you can see on a percentage basis on where those dollars are spent, and again, highlighting that large 11% of RCMP down there on the bottom. So where does the revenue come from? And so government grants, property taxes, transfers from our existing reserves, city services that we sell, et cetera, totaling about $39 million. And then again, graphically broke down kind of where that's coming from. And then on the budget expense side of things, you can see where we spend enormous amount of money on different areas, and the graphically is represented on the next page as well in terms of where those dollars are spent. Moving over to capital projects on some of the not operating related. So again, the specifically capital, you can see, as I mentioned in the opening statement, the significant amount of investment that's being done on Saskatchewan Avenue. Very happy to report that our downtown sidewalk renewal project will continue. So that's been very successful and is well received by our business community and residents frequenting the downtown area. So that's going to continue and complete the rest of that. Accessibility for City Hall, a long overdue project as well, is being dealt with in 2022. And then obviously just a few other truck replacements and some storm sewer renewals, but still $31 million, again, in capital. Switching over to utility, you see where our customer sales of water, et cetera, and government grant funding comes from. So $20 million in revenue, graphically represented on the next page on 15 of 27, if you're following along. And then the expenses on the utility side. So you can see it is a very important component, obviously, in our city, especially with the industrial development we've had that to continue to invest in our wastewater and water. But we do, again, keep those two separate entities. So general and utility are two separate reported entities, and you can see both of them doing very well. Capital projects on the utility fund. Again, another major investment with our water pollution control facility upgrade at $10 million. I mentioned earlier about Saskatchewan Avenue. There are expenses that are attributed to the utility in this project as well, and you can see that there's $5 million. And that is some of the underground work that residents don't necessarily see, but are actually quite disruptive in our normal course of commute. And so I'd just like to thank citizens and visitors to Portage for their patience as we work through a multi-year project, again, affecting a major artery in our city, and that will continue. And there will be disruptions, so again, asking for the citizens' patience for a long-term project that will benefit us over the course of the next number of years. So partnering with our community, there is a complete listing of the community grants and related party funding, and it is available on our website, and this funding was announced in February during the budget speech. So as I've mentioned through my report, but I will do it specifically again, our employee group is a core strength of the city. Without their dedication, our programs and services simply would not happen, and we do appreciate the opportunity to serve the community. A fantastic group of employees dedicated to bettering the lives of citizens and visitors to our region. So on behalf of council, thank you. And just a reminder again that there's over 140 full and part-time employees, and our annual payroll here at the city is significant at $7.8 million. So we do throw a couple slides in there because a lot's made of mill rates and comparables, and what is a mill rate? And it's just trying to explain that it is 1/1000th part, and 1 mill represents basically $1 of taxes for every $1,000 of proportioned assessment. So every property owner does get an assessment on their properties from the province of Manitoba, and so you can start to see that relation. So a little bit of changes on the education tax rebate. As many know, that last year this province of Manitoba kind of changed how those rebates work. And so residential and farm property owners will receive a 37.5 rebate for their 2022 gross education taxes. And all other property owners, including commercial, will continue to receive a 10% rebate applied to their 2022 gross education taxes. And those receiving the education tax credit will see last year's $525 reduced to $437, resulting in an increase in their total taxes. This is important because a lot of people just draws attention to the bottom line on your tax bill. And while I just talked about a small overall increase from the cities or affected by the city, there will be a change in your tax bill related to this. And that is directly related to the reduction in that tax credit. So definitely it will go up. And I know if I'm a property owner like everybody else, you open that envelope up and you look at the bottom line, and that's not what the city told me. It is because there is this education credit component change. So it's very important to read that and understand it. So back to the mill rate, you can see that the overall property at 20.240, and then it's broken down education, local, and provincial support levy. So those are all kind of mapped out in that chart for the comparisons between 2022 and 2021. And you can see, as I said earlier, there is a reduction actually in the education levy. So you can see that small change there. So thought I would note that. And so one of the goals of, at least at my chair and previous councils, was to make sure that we stay competitive when it came to the mill rate to other communities. You have to make sure that you're comparing the proverbial apples to apples. And so the things that we offer in our city to our citizens and the potential for increased investment, the decisions that we're making, we still need to be competitive. And so we have been maintaining a reduction in our mill rate and maintaining it so it's conducive to an environment of investment. And I think that's paid off, that philosophy, in the success that we've seen over the last number of years. So as we've done in previous years, to determine your property taxes, the assessed value of your property, you can find that out, and there's links available as a step one. You can compare it to last year's tax bill, and then use the tax impact calculator to look at what the taxes for 2022 are going to look like. And again, there's a couple of areas pointing to those mill rate changes and then that education rebate change. So I talked a lot about capital projects and basically operating funds that's being spent both on the general side and utility. But what does it mean about our debt? And sometimes there's some commentary about that as, are we taking on a lot of debt to do what we're doing? And that's not actually the case. The city's debt plan is included with the 10-year capital plan, and the general fund debt, $9.6 million by the end of December, including 2022 funding for Saskatchewan Avenue General Infrastructure Project. And on the utility side, only $2.8 million at the end of the year, including 2022 funding for Saskatchewan Avenue. So not a tremendous amount of debt left in our city. And as I get into my full report, you'll see that we do meet all of the parameters under which a municipality is supposed to operate under in terms of the maximum allowable debt load. So again, just as a recap, there's additional resources obviously always on our city, the tax impact calculator, a link to determine your property taxes, and then back to the Manitoba education tax changes, this financial plan, and then my budget speech, including, like I mentioned earlier, a listing of those community grants. I would like to thank all the individuals in the finance department on putting this plan together and this presentation. Consummate professionals that do their job very well, and happy to work with them. So that does conclude my presentation during the public hearing, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Budds. Are there any letters to be read out? No. Thank you. Is there anyone else present to speak to public hearing? Is there anyone else present to speak to the public hearing? Final and third call. Anyone else here to speak to the public hearing? Hearing and seeing no one, entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will move to close the public hearing for the 2022 Financial Plan and Tax Levy Bylaw 22-8735.
Moved by Councillor Budds and seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Okay, so continuing on, we actually do have to approve this particular item. And so in my report, I did go through quite a bit of that information. But 2022 budget does relies on $12.9 million in property taxes to meet all the expenditures not covered by other revenues. And obviously, as I mentioned, we remain very committed to investing in our city and to improve and enhance our infrastructure to meet the needs of our citizens, which includes $32 million in general and $26 million in utility. We've done a very good job, as mentioned, in no property tax increases, but as you know and as mentioned, we will have to for the operating increased costs of the RCMP contract. The recent provincial budget has increased the education tax rebate for residential, so you will still get a rebate check. I should have mentioned that. And it might look a little bit bigger, but then you got to compare it to your property tax bill, which will also go up. So there is, you do, and they won't come at the same time. That's the important part too, because you'll get a check, think that you are getting a check back, then you get your tax bill later, and then it's really the net off that you really have to do in terms of a comparison. So again, there's the comparisons in the $250,000 residential property assessment and a $500,000 commercial property assessment, clearly outlining kind of some anticipated changes. So I just finished talking about the debt management plan and where we were, and I just wanted to comment that there is the debt management plan is incorporated into our enhanced 10-year capital plan. A lot of municipalities don't necessarily do a 10-year, they do 5, and so that's always been this organization's plan to do 10. And so based on a regulatory requirement that a municipality's debt cannot exceed 7% of its total property's assessment and debt payments can't exceed 20% of its annual gross revenue, the maximum debt load for the city is $44 million. And you heard me talk about, approximately 9 and 3. So we are well within the maximum debt for our city, and the annual debt payments can't exceed $4.3 million. And so with 2022 remaining debt outstanding of $7.5 million, $4.9 million in additional debt to be exercised primarily through Saskatchewan Avenue, the total annual amounts of $2.1 million, the city is well within its maximum requirement. So again, just another example of what we're doing here is this investment. We're doing it responsibly, and we are not anywhere near the thresholds that are set out from the provincial government. So very happy to move that bylaw 22-8735, being a bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie, to authorize the levying and raising of property taxes for school and municipal purposes for the year ending December 31st, 2022, be given first reading.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Knox?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, thank you to the Finance Committee for all of the great information, and definite kudos to our administration for the decisions they make. It's nice that we can say that the decisions around this table that we're involved in didn't cause any increases in our tax amounts. But I do want to point out that, yeah, the RCMP changes have caused that, but the RCMP contract we have is a very important service to our city, and we value them here. And so I just want to make sure that when people get their tax bill that they really take the time to understand it, because they will just see the bottom line and think it's maybe decisions that we made. But we didn't have any control of those decisions, but we absolutely support the RCMP, at least I do from my chair. And I just hope that we carry that on, because it's something that we have to do. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Councillor Draycott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to say thank you again to administration and to council for our role in this plan. I'm really excited to see some of our projects finishing off, like the sidewalk project that was definitely a concern for citizens that was addressed to us, that we were able to do some changes to what our plan was to make sure that that was addressed quickly and efficiently. And also very excited to see Saskatchewan Avenue not only progressing, but work being accomplished on that, which was a huge thing for this council, not necessarily something that we foresaw being able to do in this term. And so the hard work that the administration did in order to get us to this stage has allowed us to make this huge improvement to our community. I'm very excited that this plan allows us to continue on with that. So thank you very much to administration and council for your hard work on this.
Further questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll move into committee. First up is Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have nothing more to report.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The City Planning and Economic Development Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Community Services Committee. Councillor Draycott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing at this moment in the agenda for Community Services Committee.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Draycott.
Thank you, Your Worship. As well, nothing for the Waterworks Committee at this moment in the agenda.
And Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have one announcement. On April the 12th, our Director of Operations, Jocelyn Lequi-Jobin, and our former Director of Operations, Kelly Braden, attended the Association of Consulting Engineering Companies Manitoba Awards Gala as representatives of the City of Portage for the Crescent Lake Causeway project. Together with representatives from AECOM, the consulting engineer on the project, we accepted the Award of Excellence in Transportation Engineering. This was a complex project that required a lot of community engagement, and we're happy and proud to receive this recognition. I believe Ms. Lequi-Jobin actually has that award with her here tonight.
It's a fantastic award. Thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councillor Espy. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox, please.
Thank you, Worship. Nothing in this portion of the meeting, but I do have a couple of quarterly reports ahead.
Okay, thank you. We have no deferred business this evening. We have a number of items of new business. First item of new business is quarterly reports, City Planning and Economic Development Committee, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Council, of course, it always excites me to read what the first quarter report is in reference to the City Planning and Economic Development. So our first quarter report tonight from PRED, which we know is our regional economic arm. I'm going to ask Ms. Eva Leary, the Executive Director and the Economic Development Officer for PRED, to come up.
Thank you.
I see she's already here.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Good evening, Council, and I am very excited to be here and present our quarter one report. Can you believe we're here already in quarter two of 2022? PRED's focus is to create that environment for success, and we do that through a variety of programs. We focus on motivating and enticing new investment into our community, as well as focusing on our business community for expansion and retention. So we do this through a variety of programs such as investment attraction, business retention and expansion, tourism, developing strong partnerships, and providing economic development lenses throughout the community. In quarter one, we've seen lots of progress in our 4 core areas of our strategic plan. On page 4, you'll see a high-level summary that speaks to some of the initiatives that PRED has been focusing on. And we're really putting an emphasis this quarter and this year on our local businesses and really focusing on expansion and retention initiatives. Page 5 speaks to our strong relationships with our Portage Economic Response Team and the economic development stakeholders and the initiatives that they have spearheaded over the last 2 years. Page 6 and 7 speaks to the Portage Regional Tourism and the tremendous amount of success that this committee has had. And just to highlight some of those initiatives that you're going to see in the community as we move into the summertime: 2 new information kiosks, some new tourism merchandise, a tourism asset finding program, and a lot more. And we're also excited to announce that Burger Days will be back on June 6th. So a lot of our businesses are excited about that. Page 8 speaks to our approach of being champions of economic development in our community and how we're progressing our business retention and expansion program. And then page 9 finally speaks to how PRED continues to attract investment and ignite projects for the benefit of the entire region. We've seen a heightened amount of inquiries, and we continue to maintain traction with some of our investors and look forward to continuing these efforts. We're excited to move forward into quarter 3, probably now soon, in 2022, and look to see more continued growth. And I can take any questions you may have.
Any questions from council? Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Worship. And certainly no questions, even. I just wanted to take this opportunity. We really know that, first of all, this is one of my most exciting council meetings of the year because I love to see all of the reports from all of the different areas of everything that's going on in our community. We do know, of course, that PRED is the quarterback for our regional economic arm. But I also want to just take an opportunity to thank the entire team that works behind her. And sometimes they're in the shadows, no different than Pred, and whether it be our city manager, the CAO of the RM, all of the partners in the investment team and so on, that I do know do an excellent, incredible job in putting this whole thing together. And I think that kind of speaks as to where we're at in Portage to this day. So congratulations, Eve, again on a job well done, and we really appreciate the report. And I know you run through it really quickly, but if you get a chance to read it, there's a lot of really good information there. Good job.
Any, Councillor Knox?
Thank you. And maybe I've read this or where are the new kiosks going to be?
So we're hoping to have one just outside Fort Lorraine Museum and then one on the island. We really want to enforce tourism and Manitoba and Portage la Prairie for tourism as an economic driver, and we feel that an accessible 24/7 tourism kiosk where people can visit and click a QR code will be very beneficial.
That's awesome. That's great. Thanks.
Further questions or comments? Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. Next up is first quarter 2022 reports from Community Service Committee. Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a number of first quarter reports. The first quarter report that is there is for our youth councillor, unfortunately unable to attend the meeting this evening. However, we did hear from her last meeting. So just basic overview, she does have some activities beginning this quarter. So she is planning an activity to bring the youth of Portage together, as well hoping to plan an in-person Meet Your Counselor event. There was a survey that was distributed to all the high school students. Grade 8 high school orientation should begin this quarter, as well as applied to be part of the Prime Minister's Youth Council. And she does have some goals there for future activities as well. My next quarter report for community services this evening is actually for PCRC, and I do know that Mrs. Victoria Espy is here if she's able to give us an overview of her report.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. Good evening, Council. Q1 was extremely busy for us. We have a number of ongoing projects and programs continuing on at PCRC. But as per usual, I'll pick out a few of the highlights. Currently, the local immigration partnership is working on exploring a project called, through the province, the Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program, and we're gathering information on what that could possibly mean for our community. The local immigration partnership team is also currently planning Anti-Racism Week for 2022, which will be held in June. The Communities Building Youth Futures project, I am very pleased to announce, was awarded a $250,000 grant to help support the continuity of the roving campus program. So we have hired a new staff that will work with the roving campus to support those students through their grade 12 year, but also follow them for up to a year after to just continued support to enter into adulthood. So congratulations to that team for that grant. It's huge. Our community facilitator, Rachel Templeton, she was awarded a $25,000 grant through CN Rail to support the skate park. And she's also applied to a number of different funding opportunities for both the skate park and the Cocoa Platts Community Club outdoor rink project. So we're still waiting to hear back on some of those, but the grants that she's applied for are quite substantial. So fingers crossed. Rachel's also launched the Community Roots First Time Homebuyer program and is going through the first round of applications. There were 4 community events held, so virtual yoga, quarantine activity kits for families who were quarantining at home. We held Winterfest this year, however, it was virtual, and the Grow Together kits. So Wowokia in particular has been extremely busy. We've had 47 referrals, which this past quarter, which brings the total number of referrals to 94. 42 were accepted, 16 had brief intervention, and 25 have entered the program that will have a year of support. So Mary's extremely busy. We're also waiting to hear back on a large, a very substantial grant to support that work, and we should hear by May 8th. Reaching Home, also very busy. Hopefully you've seen some community members getting flocked by this team. So that is our ongoing fundraiser to support the work that the Reaching Home team is doing. So they are working with people who are experiencing homelessness and getting them into permanent housing solutions. So that money goes towards first and last month's rent, damage deposits, food in the fridge, furniture, clothing, that sort of stuff. So if you feel like flocking your family, friend, or neighbor, give our office a call, and I think we've got about 100 flamingos that can go on somebody's lawn. The Portage Urban Indigenous Peoples Coalition is also very busy, and they've kind of identified some of the projects that they've been working on, but in particular, this quarter they held an enrichment gathering with many different community partners, including Bear Clan, the local immigration partnership at the Gillespie, which featured lessons on jingle dress dancing, the 7 sacred teachings, smudging, tobacco. They had some puppeteers, and it was very well attended. We held our last vaccination clinic on April the 6th, and so that project is now over. We strongly encourage people to continue to get vaccinated and boosted when eligible, and those vaccines are eligible through your pharmacy, your family doctor, and places like that. But I'm very happy to report that over the course of the past year, we administered 10,000 doses. So it was something that we probably never thought we'd do, but we did it, and I feel like we did it well. The last thing I would like to acknowledge is this month, we are celebrating one of our board members, Scott Lawrence. April 2022 is his 10-year anniversary of being on our board. So if you see him, thank him. We are so grateful to have him as a part of our board, and yeah, he's just been a blessing to us. And that's it from me, and I can answer any questions if anyone has.
Any questions or comments from council? Okay, thank you very much.
My next quarterly report is from the Heritage Advisory Committee. So there is continuation of archiving going on, as well as communication with the St. Claude Regional Archives about the possibility of establishing a place to house materials from Portage la Prairie, as well as the possibility of funding a summer archivist position for Portage la Prairie. And so the Heritage Committee is continuing on with those conversations as well, always doing good work to ensure that the memories of Portage la Prairie will be around for a long, long period of time. And you stole my thunder, Mr. Mayor. I had acknowledgements of Les Green's birthday as well. So very happy to Mr. Green. Very happy birthday. My third quarterly report would be from Public Art. Not a lot of activity for public art this quarter. However, they are looking to coordinate meetings and discuss the next steps in obtaining quotes and locations for possible public art installations in the future. As well, Portage Parks Committee continues to meet monthly. They are currently in the process of evaluating RFP submissions that were proposed for the skate park, and looking to select a submission there. Continuing to fundraise for Simplot Central Park in general, with their major project at this moment being a skate park. And just looking at opening of existing features for the summer, as long as the weather will cooperate with us, to have those features open up for the summer in the next quarter. And I think that's all that I have for Community Services Committee first quarter reports, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. Next we have Public Safety Committee, first quarter reports for 2022. Councillor Knox, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have a first quarter report from the RCMP here, and Inspector Peddle is with us, so I will let him come and speak to it.
Good evening, everyone. I got to meet everybody at the last meeting I attended on the computer, so it's nice to be here in person and see you all face to face. So hopefully it's a sign of things to come and we'll get to do it more often. So yeah, it's been a pleasure to be here. As I mentioned in the last meeting, everybody's been so welcoming to me. What I'll do now is I'll take the time to go through some of the significant parts of the reports, and at the end I'll answer any questions that anybody may have. So, as you're all aware, we have faced some significant resourcing impacts on our detachment. We've been down quite a few bodies, and as you're aware as well, we don't get any replacements. If somebody goes off sick or if somebody's off on maternity or paternity leave, we have to continue on with our duties with no replacement. So it just puts a bit of impact on the other members that are working. And we've also had a great impact over the last few months with COVID. We've had quite a few members off work, and I know even recently in a 2-week period we had 8 employees from our office that went down with COVID. So yeah, in the last, our quarter is a little different. This is not our first quarter. This will be our final quarter. So this is our 4th quarter plan. We run from April 1st to March 31st. So we just finished up our fiscal year and are beginning our new fiscal year. So we've had 3 members that have transferred out from our detachment, and we've had 5 members that have transferred in during that period. For our overtime in the last quarter, we expended a little over $64,000 for a total of almost $271,000 for the fiscal year, and almost $27,000 went to the Corps Commissioner. So that's basically our guarding at our cell block, for a total of almost $125,000 for the fiscal year. So the last report that I received from district for the Central Plains, for the provincial as well as the municipal contract, for the city, it indicated that we expended 87.4% of our budget for the year. So we were a bit under for that, and that's out of the $666,000 for the city portion. So some of the key objectives that we have, and I'll talk a little bit at the end as well. We base our performance on an annual performance plan. So we meet with our different rural municipalities, our cities, to get input on items they'd like to see the RCMP focus on in the community. So that could be issues such as traffic. If there's a drug problem in the community, obviously that will come up, and we'd target initiatives in that area to help, and we'd set goals to help target and focus on those problems. So from the past quarter, we've done 61 checks on curfew checks. So we have prolific offenders in our community that get released from the court, and one of our objectives is to keep close tabs on those individuals. So what will happen is we'll have our police officers go to those homes, do curfew checks to make sure they're abiding by the conditions. If they're not, they'll be charged accordingly and put back through the court process. Like I said, unfortunately, a lot of the times, whether the person gets released from the court, it's out of our hands. Our job is to investigate and lay the charge, and we work with the Crown Attorney to relay any important information if that person needs to be remanded. So we work very closely with the Crown. We've done 11 judicial authorizations in the last quarter, so that's basically search warrants. We've targeted a lot of drug homes. I've kept the mayor and Nathan updated with some information in that aspect. So we were able to shut down a couple of drug houses in the area, and we had some significant seizures of CDSA drugs, as well as a number of firearms that were seized from the city as well. And we've done 3 referrals in the last quarter to restorative justice. We also had 168 contacts with our community stakeholders, and that there's a list there that names off. We're very involved in the community. I sit on a number of committees with a number of people at this table, and I know I sat with Nathan and Sherilyn this morning on the 3CR committee, and I was also over to Wawokia this morning and met with Mary and Victoria and got to see the many great things that they do for our city. So we're just very grateful to have that partnership and to work with them. For the schools, there were 124 contacts and presentations over the last quarter. So as you're aware, we do have a dedicated school liaison, Constable Arvi, and he does just a tremendous job. His duties are strictly for attending schools and making sure that we're there to speak to the kids on important topics. And I did have the pleasure of going with him last week to our high school here at PCI, and he gave me a tour of the school, and yeah, just a great facility, and got to meet some of the kids there. So that was one of the highlights. A lot of my days are tied up with meetings and traveling around, so when I'm able to do something like that, it's a pleasure to get out and do those things. For foot patrols, you're going to see that there was 0 foot patrols in the last quarter, and you know, a lot of that, I know it's probably going to be asked why there was 0. A lot of it comes down to our resources. A lot of it comes down to the weather that we've had. I have met with Sherilyn, and you know, that's one of the things, and I met with Nathan as well, and it's been requested that that be continued in our upcoming annual performance plan again. So with the weather starting to come around after our last storm last weekend, we will see an increase in the foot patrols. I will make sure that that's a priority for our detachment. I did meet with our staff sergeant and sergeants today, as well as our corporals, and just made it known that that's going to be a priority for the city, and that we get out there on foot and for the public to see us out there. So with the weather, you know, coming around a little bit now, we will increase in that area, and we will definitely include it on our new annual performance plan this year. So we've done, in the last quarter, there's been 346 tickets issued for traffic-related issues, 1 for a cell phone. We did 6 check stops. There were no inland water patrols, obviously, because of the weather and time of year, but that will ramp up now with the nice weather on the way, I hope. For Indigenous community relationships, we've done 10 contacts over the last quarter. I've gotten to meet with the chief of the Manitoba First Nations Policing Service, so I've sat down with him, discussed some priorities and some partnerships, and I've got out to the Dakota TP First Nations, where I've met with the chief there as well to discuss some priorities and things we can work on together in the community. We've also had 46 communication opportunities with stakeholders, elected officials, and other additional partners as well. So we've been quite busy. You'll see on the last page, it just gives you a representation of how the call volume that we take in Portage. I've told you before, I've done 8 different detachments over the years of my service, and I will say this is the busiest, by far the busiest detachment that I've been at. We've taken 14,623 calls for service in the last year, so it's very significant. And when you couple that with the resource challenges that we have, our members are very busy. I've gotten to see it firsthand, and they work extremely hard. So, you know, I'm just fortunate to be part of the team here. So, before I finish off there, I've had the chance to go around and meet with the different RMs and the city in my area. I have quite a few of them because I look after Amaranth and Treehorn as well. So, just gotten around and getting to meet everybody in the community, and I got to say, everybody's been so welcoming and great, and you know, it's been very warm for me, so I just want to thank everybody for that. One last thing as well, I want to just say a special thanks to the fire department, to Phil and Brad. We had a very significant file here in the last couple of weeks that's tied our members up, and as you can imagine, it's the impact that it has on the members, the community, and our firefighters. We all got to go home at the end of the day, and when there's kids involved, it can be very difficult. So I just wanted to take the time to thank Brad and Phil for their excellent response for them and the firefighters that they helped us over the last couple of weeks. So yeah, it's been busy, but everybody's worked hard, and the outcome was really good. So that's it for the quarterly report. If you got any questions, just let me know. And also, I just want to put it out there that the new APP our annual performance plan, will be developed in the next couple of weeks. I did have the chance to sit down with Nathan a couple of weeks ago and talk about it, but if there's any issues in the community that you'd like to see addressed on the AP piece, just certainly feel free to reach out. Let Nathan or Sherilyn know, and they can certainly pass it on to me, and we'll make sure that it's incorporated. But for right now, the foot patrols will continue, and I can assure you that the CDSA, the drug problem in the city, will continue like it always is to be a priority. Thank you.
Council have any questions for Inspector Peddle? Councillor Knox?
Just a couple of comments first. I really appreciate your report there and hearing how you're getting involved in our community, and I think that's so important. And I love to hear your communication with our First Nations communities and building those relationships. And I can speak for my chairs that if there's any support you need from me or anything that how we can get involved in that I would love to be a part of that. Just one question. I'm just curious, there was 7 impaired occurrences in the last year in this quarter, and then 22 this year. Was there some targeted strategy, or was it just happened to be?
So I checked on that today. So basically, what we boil it down to is the 22 occurrences that could be any sort of complaint that comes from the public. So somebody could call in and say there's a car swerving on Saskatchewan Avenue. That would classify as an occurrence for impaired driving. We'd pull the vehicle over if we found it. A lot of the times it could be that the vehicle was avoiding potholes, or it was just, it wasn't impaired at all, but it gets classified as that because of the way the file came in. And also, COVID definitely had an impact on it. Last year at this time, there were a lot more restrictions on our officers. We were getting the message not to, with COVID being fairly new as far as approaching vehicles unnecessarily. So right now we've gotten back to where we need to be, where the members are out checking vehicles, pulling vehicles over. But when it first started, there was, I know in Newfoundland, because that's where I was at the time, there was specific documentation that came out just advising the members to tail back a bit on pulling vehicles over because of the uncertainty of the disease at that time. So I think that had a lot to do with it. But when you look back at last quarter, from October to December, it's pretty online. There's 21 impaired occurrences there. So.
Thank you. And then just to reiterate the comment you made is that just with the incident that we've had in our community, that we definitely have been thinking about your members and you and the fire department and what you've gone through, and we thank you for all the hard work that you did in that incident. So.
Thank you.
Councillor Budds?
Thank you. Excellent report. Just a question on, I know you highlighted the stats for the calls for service, and so as I'd mentioned in my report, the city does expend a lot of money every year for policing services, and much more than neighboring municipalities in any type of a comparison. So this detachment, as you mentioned, is responsible for responding to rural calls, and that represented, based on the stats that you gave us, about 40% of your activity is actually calls from neighboring RMs. So given the staffing challenges that you've been facing, how are you feeling about the ability to respond to the municipal ratepayers' calls for an entity that is paying for this service, and the struggles there are on responding to the RM at 40% of your call volume?
Yeah, like so far from my time here, I've been here, it's going on 5 months now, and I haven't seen any concern at all as far as members being able to respond. They do pick up the slack. Yeah, we'd like to have a further complement of the full members. We have been down for a significant period of time, but as far as getting to the calls for service and responding, we've been able to do it with the resources that we have.
Other questions for Inspector Peddle? Okay, well, thank you very much for the report this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have the bylaw enforcement quarterly report as well, and I do believe we have Kyle and Jessica here as well, or she's hiding. Okay, perfect. Kyle, thank you. I called her out. She's coming now.
Good evening, Council and Your Worship. First quarter 2022 is done. It was a little slow for us. have a second winter. Now we're into our second spring, so cleanup should start in the city, which will pick up for us. Auto chalk was down a little bit, only $5,400 in revenue. Parking tickets did go up 8,000. Bylaw related was 7,500 for a total revenue of $21,085. 44 animals were impounded this quarter compared to the last quarter of 49, and 140 calls for service compared to 172 from last year's first quarter. One thing that did end in the first quarter, as of March 15th, we stopped enforcing the COVID health orders. In the first quarter, we did issue $6,500 in fines to persons for masks, other offenses, and businesses. That was one job I'm glad is done, and hopefully stays away. Other than that, we're starting to pick up now into the second quarter, but that's the first.
Any questions from council? Councillor Knox?
Thank you. I don't have a question. I just would like to say that I find this report very valuable and very clear, and so therefore I don't have any questions. So thank you for making it that way and providing all that good information, and keep up the good, busy spring work.
Thank you.
Mr. Pito?
Through your worship to Kyle and Jessica, I just wanted to thank our bylaw services in regards to the COVID enforcement. That was something that the province asked municipalities to participate in, and we moved forward and did do enforcement through our bylaw services and also the work of our fire department. I want to recognize Phil and Brad as well, and that was something they did extremely well for the protection of the community. It was not in the job description when you applied, and you guys went and got the training, and you did an excellent job. So I wanted to thank you for your support during that time.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from council? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for coming out this evening and presenting the report.
Just one last thing. Congratulations to Phil on his retirement. We work closely with him, and looking forward to working with Mr. Bailey in the future. Thanks.
Just one more thing, Your Worship, for my report is, it is my first term as a councillor and the Public Safety Chair. And I do want to acknowledge Mr. Carpenter on, he has been a big value, an asset to me, and I've been full of a lot of questions over the last 3 years, so I may have something to do with why he's leaving. But I just want to thank him for all his support and the knowledge that he's given me in this role, and I wish him well in his retirement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Knox. Waterworks Committee. First quarter reports, Councillor Draycott.
Thank you, Worship. I do have the first quarter report for the Utility Division activity report. There's lots of numbers in this report. It's a very extensive report, and I appreciate all of the effort that's been put into it. I'm going to try to give you a high-level overview of it if I can this evening. And the report, of course, is there for council and the public to review as well. So the water treatment ran very well in January to March 2022. In early April, typical spring breakup conditions began and saw minor treatment issues. However, then we did have recent cold weather, and the river appeared to have frozen over again, and staff prepared for a potential second spring breakup condition that may result from that. Lime Sludge Pond Supernant line, which runs from the lime sludge ponds to the river, was determined to be frozen. Approval was granted to pump that overland to the river. Utility maintenance continues to pump the pond down as required and as time permits. The water supply line to the dam pump well has frozen again this year. A heat trace is working, so the line may be frozen underground, and this will be reviewed for the upcoming months to determine a solution before next winter. The water treatment plant had another inspection by the Provincial Health and Safety Officer. That officer made a point of mentioning that this, quote, "This is the best water plant that I've ever inspected in regard to occupational hygiene." So congratulations on the water treatment plant for that. As a result, there's only one information request to send and one request to improve the chemical containment for the phosphoric acid. So kudos to the great operation and maintenance team. There was just some overview there about ozone leak mentioned in the last quarter that has been mitigated. As well, there were a couple of fails over the last quarter for both that and the water pollution control facility, but those are being mitigated as well. One of those was trout toxicity, this is why. Trout toxicity, and it was reported as a fail. It was determined that the DO probe was giving improper readings. This was repaired and the basin adjustments were made, and new samples were sent in January 11th, which then passed. Manitoba Conservation was notified. Manitoba Conservation was also notified that in January 19th, the flare that burns the biogas from the low-rate anaerobic, I had this issue last time, that big word that I just can't get my tongue around. Anaerobic reactor stopped working, and it was necessary to open the bypass vent to allow that gas to exhaust to the atmosphere and prevent buildup of gas under the reactor cover. So the maintenance staff did replace the flame arrestor and restarted the flare within a few hours. And as I said, Manitoba Conservation was notified as that as well. So some projects upcoming are the wastewater upgrade. The administration continues to revise industrial service agreements and work with the industry. Progress is ongoing with the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, working with the province on financial security items. Industrial park capacity study is ongoing, expected to be completed quarter 2, 2022, and utility maintenance building. The exterior of that office area is constructed. Prefab metal shop materials have arrived and the geothermal system is being installed. The contractor's reporting delays, of course, due to weather and COVID impacts and on the supply chain. So estimated occupancy for that site will be August 8th, 2022. Waterworks Division remained busy with routine maintenance and repairs as well as several breaks. Snow clearing of the city infrastructure was also a priority, and the engineering department, the project manager, assisted with utility division on issuing an RFP to select a consultant to prepare the design and tender documents for replacing the roof on the McKay Reservoir. So that continues on. And if there are any questions, then I can definitely refer to someone else.
Councillor Budge, did you have a question on the anaerobic reactor? No? Other questions from council? Well, kind of disappointing, but no questions, Councillor Drake.
I would say thank you very much for the very thorough report and keeping us up to date on what's going on in a very important part of our city and infrastructure. So it's great to know what is happening here and when things are going well and when things are not going well, that they are being looked after right away. So congratulations to all of those employees that work in that department.
Okay, and that concludes our quarterly reports. We're going to move into new business. First up is the MOU with the Portage Junkyard Dog Cycling Club. This is Community Service Committee. Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we do have the Memorandum of Understanding with the Portage Junkyard Dog Cycling Club. So we did hear from the Junkyard Dog Cycling Club this evening. In 2021, they did approach the city about using the green space commonly referred to as the dump hill, the former landfill site, for the purpose of developing a new cycling park. The process of reviewing the request, it was discovered that the property was under the ownership of the province of Manitoba, as we heard this evening. Since this discovery, the city has formally requested from the province of Manitoba to lease this green space for a bike park and trail system in partnership with Junkyard Dogs. As the city and the Junkyard Dogs wait for final approval from the province of Manitoba, both parties have agreed to create a memorandum of understanding to solidify the commitments on both sides for the creation of a multi-use recreational space on the property. While an MOU is not a legally binding agreement, it formalizes the intentions of both parties until a formal legal lease agreement can be established. This MOU also allows the Junkyard Dogs to strengthen their fundraising applications to the province of Manitoba and other possible funders. The MOU outlines several key commitments from both parties, including that the park will remain a free space for all user groups. The city will continue contribute funds, to build a perimeter fence to protect the new park from motorized vehicles. The city will accept donations on behalf of Junkyard Dogs and issue charitable receipts as per CRA guidelines. All funds needed for the trails and cycling infrastructure of the park will be fundraised by Junkyard Dogs. The city will lease the property subject to Crown approval from the province of Manitoba. The city will cover the recreation activities occurring at the park under its general insurance policy. Junkyard Dogs will be responsible to maintain the trail system, the park equipment, and take steps to reasonably protect users' safety. A 5-year agreement to compensate Junkyard Dogs for trail and equipment maintenance will be established through the PRRA. All of the agreements in the MOU are subject to the province approving the use of this property for recreational purposes. The city expects a formal response from the province of Manitoba on this request by the end of May. Should the city council approve this MOU, city administration will begin the process of developing a formal agreement with Junkyard Dogs once the province has approved the property use. Therefore, it is the recommendation council of the city of Portage la Prairie approve the MOU with the Junkyard Dogs Cycling Club for the use of the green space located at the former Portage la Prairie landfill site. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Draycott and seconded by Councillor Knox. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Knox.
Yeah, I'd just like some clarification on the one line that says a 5-year agreement to compensate for trail equipment and maintenance. I'm just not quite sure what that means.
Through your worship to Councillor Knox, in discussions of the MOU, Junkyard Dogs obviously would have costs to maintain the paths and maintain the equipment that it would invest in and fundraise. Council asked us to work in partnership with the PRRA to fund an agreement that would give the Junkyard Dogs funding to maintain that equipment over a 5-year period, and that allows the facility to remain free to public users.
Thank you.
Councillor Draycott.
I would also highlight for council that there are views of the draft proposed park as well as overhead views of the dump area that we are speaking of this evening attached to the agenda.
And other questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We have no old business this evening, so that concludes our business for council, and council adjourned at 7:12 p.m. And we're going to move right into committee. And we'll call committee to order at 7:12 p.m. First up is Finance Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Worship. There'll be an item coming from my chair to our next council meeting with regards to an agreement for IT services with the RM. The agreement is attached, outlines kind of the contractual term and rate. And so I actually went through this report and do have some questions for administration on this item. What analysis has been done to determine, I guess, is the $100 an hour, is that what was in the previous agreement, or has it been increased from the previous agreement? Because I did not see that in the report.
Through your worship to Councillor Buds, the previous agreement had a rate of $75 per hour. It has been increased to $100 an hour in this agreement.
Okay, and then what analysis has been done to determine whether or not that is a competitive market rate? Because in the description of the agreement, one could argue that this is almost a managed service contract where, you know, if you look at the responsibilities of our IT personnel, it's pretty broad. It looks like the RM is actually relying on our IT personnel for the majority of their IT support. Have we done any analysis to say $100 an hour is market rate? Because it's not.
So I think, first of all, Councillor Buds, you're correct that the RM does rely for the majority of their IT services upon our IT department. We also have some other agreements with shared software, shared servers, and in terms of the contract cost and market rate analysis, it was an increase to the previous rate, but what we did is we looked at how many hours we were providing and looked at the primary provider of that in terms of our hourly rate charged by our staff, and believe that rate would be recouping our cost and then covering some additional costs related to that. So did we compare it to private industry? I would say no, but we did take a look at what our hourly cost was for our employee, what was being provided to the RM, and believed it was in the ballpark as a fair rate in that spirit of partnership with the RM.
Okay, a couple other points that I think we as council have to understand that, you know, this is maybe not as a large a highlight as in previous, but there is a real increased understanding among organizations of cyber awareness, cyber threats, etc. And when somebody is employed as an IT support, and what I mean by that is, if you look at the definitions in this agreement under what we are to provide the RM with, and this would be under a legal agreement, they include network management, routine checks and cleans up on servers, internet access, PC and supporting equipment errors, data protection and security. It is technology liaison, inventory. So there's a big list. Data backup management. And so what we're suggesting is that for $4,800 a year, the RM is getting those managed services from us. Fine. There's a real risk here, because if it is technically viewed as a managed service contractor and we're doing all these things, and if something were to happen there where we could expose ourselves on the limited, we won't be able to say, well, we only did it for 4 hours or 3 hours. We're not responsible, yet the agreement does indicate we are. And so, you know, from my chair, I think we got to really look at where is the indemnity. And in fact, this contract does speak to indemnity, but it's in favor of the RM.
Right.
Saying that, you know, so we have to review this agreement to say we are saved from litigation if there was an event at the RM. And this, in my opinion, this agreement does not do it for the type of services that are outlined on an almost not even a part-time basis. It's very limited in terms of what they're paying for, but the expectations are big, which could cloud litigation if something were to happen. I have concerns over it. So I would see if anyone else has those, or if there's any response to my concerns from administration.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Buds, thank you for your comments, and this is why these agreements are in committee, to get some additional feedback from council. What I will say is I see your concerns about indemnification. I think this is an agreement that has been updated from a previous agreement, and I agree with you that the threats in cybersecurity have drastically increased, and municipalities seem to be disproportionately targeted. And I hear your concerns, and I can think of some additional wording in this agreement that could potentially address your concerns. So let me take this back to our team, and before it comes to full council, I'll make sure some of those concerns can be addressed more fulsomely.
Thank you.
Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess a question I would just ask in relationship to this, and you may not know this at this time, but our current insurance policy, how does it react to any type of a cyber situation, ransomware situation currently that we have? Because that would be a carryover from this. So,
through your worship to Councillor Meyer, so in the last 2 years, the city has upgraded its coverage for cybersecurity risks to the highest level it's provided by our insurance provider. We do that because we believe the risk has increased significantly. That protects us from ransomware attacks, any type of data breach, any type of information that is stolen and then released to the public, and there's a privacy violation. So we have substantial coverage from an insurance point of view, and we have done substantial training with our staff to protect the organization from the human element of security, recognizing red flags and protecting our infrastructure. So it's something we've given serious consideration over the last 2 years, and we will continue to ramp up. As Councillor Buds did mention, this is an area that is of considerable risk to organizations, and municipalities are no exception.
got it. And the only other thing I'd like to add, if I could, Your Worship, I guess I'm not a lawyer by any stretch of the imagination, but and in response to Councillor Buds' question there about terms such as a cross waiver of liability, I think is something that maybe would maybe address maybe one of those concerns at that point, and also a hold harmless agreement from that perspective. So those are two things I would talk about. I don't read them in there, but they could be buried in language that maybe I'm not familiar with. Thank you, Your Worship. That's it.
Yeah, just one final comment on that. It wouldn't be unheard of requiring base level insurance coverage for who we're providing the services to. So comment about where we are, in order for us to provide those services to somebody else, you must maintain this level of insurance. So that's something to consider as well.
Councillor Knox, you had a question?
Yeah, my question is, I guess, we as council and all of employees with the city, we undergo pretty extensive training on cyber awareness. And is that happening with the RM employees as part of this contract that we're responsible for? Do you know?
I'm not aware that the RM is taking any type of training of that nature. They may be, but I'm not aware.
Not through us.
Not through us.
And other questions or comments?
And that concludes my committee report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Buds. Next item is City Planning Economic Development Committee. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Worship. And from my chair as well, next council meeting, I will be bringing forward a proposal from a couple of citizens of Portage, from Lavio Cordero and Dana L. Williams. What they're going to request to do is to subdivide 2 lots. I won't get into the background analysis right now, but there's a drawing there for your reference. Just want to point out a couple of things. One is that when it does come up to council, is that the Planning District Development Plan does generally support the subdivision proposal. The details are there for your reference as well. There are a couple of things that would have to happen. One is that if we did approve the subdivision, that it would be subject to the variation orders. When I look in the past, I believe that we have, council in the past has supported variation orders like this before. Other than that, there's no comments or concerns, but that will be coming up to council next week for the first reading of the proposed subdivision. And that's it. Thank you, Your Worship. The end of my report.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Community Services Committee has nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Draycott again.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for the Waterworks Committee this evening.
Thank you. And Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
And finally, Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Worship. Nothing from your Public Safety Committee this evening.
Thank you. So committee is adjourned at 7:22 p.m. Thank you for coming out, everybody.